Hi everyone, I'm Allie and welcome to this YouTube Live. Welcome to all of those of you watching. We are going to be teaching a little bit of cubic right angle weave today. However, because it is cubic right angle weave, we are only doing one cube. Actually, we'll do two cubes, but we're going to do one cube and we are doing the mirrored cube earrings by Cheryl. Cheryl designed these with some of the mirrored round beads. So we're going to be using metal beads in this. And these beads were featured in one of our subscription boxes. I put the link there in the description of the video if you want to check out, because you can get all kinds of odds and ends in that. We're going to be doing these little cubic rounds or these little cubic mirrored rounds with mirrored round beads. So often when it comes to bead weaving, you're using glass beads and you don't use metal beads all that much. So I loved these and the idea of using them to create and show a different modern style. So to get a better view, and hello to everyone joining in there, we are going to be doing these cubic mirrored round beads here. So you can see that there are two different sizes of the cubic or of the mirrored rounds. And the mirrored rounds are literally round beads that are cut to look like a mirror. So it has a lot of cuts and facets in it. I have a couple different colors here to show you. They sparkle like crazy. Cheryl used the same color in her design here with 4 and 2 millimeter beads in this silver color. I'm going to use two separate colors so that way you can see the difference a little bit. I also have some green thread that I'll be using, and I just took this off my green size 8 dragon thread and used my thread burner to disconnect, and then picked up a needle here with my Bead Tech needle case, a size 10 English beading needle. So yeah, the mirrored beads are awesome. I actually have them on a bracelet that I wear all the time, so this has held up great. That is right there. They sparkle and shine like crazy. There are a ton of different options for using them. And yes, Susan, we are live. So when it comes to this class, I was going to record it, but often people have questions when it comes to cubic right angle weave or making three-dimensional beading. So I thought this would be a great one to do live instead of actually recorded. So instead of recording it, doing it live right here, that way you can ask questions. So again, these are the mirrored beads that you are seeing, and I'm going to just hit the lights a tiny bit so it's not as bright and we have a little bit more contrast to it here. There we go. It's going to darken our view a little bit and get us a little bit more of a better view on our beads that we're working on. So again, I have green thread that I have the thread or my needle on, and I have a size 10 beading needle with the green dragon thread. You will see the thread a little bit in my design. You do not in Cheryl's design because she is using white thread, and the silver beads really, really conceal it as well too. So first time catching the live, awesome. Welcome so much, Shinkia. So thanks so much for joining. I love when people come. And yes, congratulations to India on your new position as well. And hello to all of you joining in. So we're going to be doing some cubic right angle weave, and then we're going to be embellishing it as well. So it's a little bit hard to see with these mirrored rounds because they're so shiny that you can see the 4 millimeter here and then the 2s on the sides. So we're going to be creating our right angle weave, rounding it out, putting 2 millimeter beads on the sides of the 4s, and then we're going to be creating that X factor in the center of the 6 sides. One thing to think about while we're doing this is that we're going to be building 4 sides, but when we build the 4 sides and build them together, we actually end up with 6 sides because the top is going to count as 1 and the bottom is going to count as 1 as well. For materials, I have my mirrored rounds here. I have my 2 millimeter in the beautiful rose gold color that I'll be using. And then I've gone back and forth, but I think I'm going to use my darker gunmetal because it'll be easier for you to see the contrast between the gold and the gunmetal. So we'll be using the gunmetal 4 and the 3 millimeter in the gold. So sorry, I said 2, but 3 in the gold and 4 in our beautiful gunmetal color. It's really, really nice color. And then we're going to make it brighten up a little bit with our silver 15 O's. First time I've ever gotten that particular mispronunciation. Sorry. I'll have to look and see going back to the things. I'm terrible with pronunciations. And when people, especially if you join us ever on Twitch live, we have Twitch names. I am terrible at those. All right. You also want to have along with you, so 4mm and 3mm rounds. You can do the same thing with crystals. No big deal. You'll want to have some wire guards. I have 2 wire guards sitting here to do my 2 pairs of earrings. And then if you want to make them have a nice, really modern look, Cheryl's attached hers to one of the endless circles or the endless rings that are sitting there. You can also just attach it right to an ear wire as well. So to begin, I have my thread and needle, and I'm going to take out here some of my 4mm mirrored rounds and lay them down. Now the mirrored rounds have a fairly big hole, and you're going to notice that right away as we get into that right angle weave. I am going to go ahead and put in here a stop bead. So I have an 11-0 bead that is going to come off the end eventually. I'm going to put that down to the bottom of my thread. The ring here is a 30mm ring. That's what the rings are here. 30mm ring. You can use a 40 certainly. You can also do this bigger. So if you say, hey, I like it, but I want to do it as a 6mm, you can do that as well. So I'm going to take my stop bead all the way down to the bottom of the thread until I have about 3 inches left at the bottom of the thread. And I'm going to take the thread through once, thread through twice away from the tail of the thread. And that's going to get that stop bead on there. Now, when it comes to stop beads, if you've never thought about them, used them, aren't sure what they are, the stop bead usually is a bead that is not going to be part of your project. So I'll often use, if I have them sitting nearby, I'll use like a bright pink or a bright red bead. That way I don't by accident go through it. Another thing to not use, I do not like to use delicas as my stop bead. Because of their thin walls, it's actually really hard to get them off after the fact. So if you have your delica on and you're like, hey, I can't get my stop bead off, nothing's kind of more annoying than not being able to get your stop bead off when you're working with them. So go ahead and make sure that you use a rounded bead, like a seed bead, and an 11-0 is what you'll want. So we are going to begin with our right angle weave. And our right angle weave is going to consist of our 4mm mirrored rounds. So going in here, we get 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have 4 of our metal beads. So again, you can do this with any sort of bead. It's just gets a really nice look when you're including the metal beads for a bead weaving design. Go ahead and put those 4 beads on and let them drop down next to that stop bead. See, the stop bead's there to make sure that they don't come off the end of the thread, but also helps to give you tension. That's what you're going to do. All right, now we're going to do a traditional right angle weave, and we're going to take our needle and thread, and we're going to go back through the first 3 beads toward bead number 4. So we're going to sew through bead 1, then 2, then bead number 3. Making sure that you're not sewing back through that stop bead. Beads 1, 2, and 3 right there, and then out. What that's going to do is get you your first right angle unit. And our first right angle unit is simply going to look just like a square. So this is our first right angle unit. 4 beads went on, and we created this little right angle weave. It gets that little square look. And then we're going to create another right angle weave. So this one here is going to be 1, 2, 2, and 3. So the reason we're only adding 3 right now is because we're going to share the one that our thread is coming out of. So we have those 4 beads here. Give a little tight pull to get rid of some of that thread. And then we're going to go back through the bead that our thread is coming out of currently. So our thread's currently coming out of the bottom of bead number 3. We added 3 more beads, and we're going to sew into the top of bead number 3. Pulling the thread through them. That's going to pull those 3 beads right in place. So see, now you have 2 right angle weave units, number 1 and number 2. If you want to build another right angle unit, you can't do it here from the middle. You need to get over to the right hand side of the box that you've created. So you want to sew through the bottom of the box, and then you're going to sew up through the right hand side of the box. You always want to be going through and going through and coming out of the bead on the right hand side of the box. So a lot of people have a tendency to exit your thread right here, and you think, oh, I'm right there at the right hand side. No, you want your thread to be exiting through the right hand side of this box. So we've got our first right angle unit and our second right angle unit. Our third right angle unit is going to be the exact same. So we're going to add 1, 2, and 3 beads. Our thread is currently coming out of the top of the bead that's on the right hand side of the last unit, and we're going to sew into the bottom of that bead. Adding those 3 beads then, and as we pull once again, we will get our next right angle unit. So here now you see 3 right angle units. You have unit number 1, unit number 2, and unit number 3. Just like we've been doing, we cannot go on and create another unit if we don't get to the end of the unit we just did. So going in here, we need to get over to the right hand side of this unit in order to connect and make another one. So we're going to take our needle and thread, and we're going to go through the top bead. And then once again, we want our thread and needle to be exiting through the rightmost bead. So right here, that is your way to do a third unit of right angle weave. Easy peasy. From here, we are going to round out the design. When we round out the design, we are going to create a cube. Now, to create a cube, I'm going to draw a little bit of a picture for you, so that way it makes sense. If anybody has any questions, let me know. And I don't bother to reinforce the thread at the beginning because we still have a bunch that we are going to be adding on to. Because we're starting that formation of that crawl stitch. And then you can continue to build on top of it, and I'll go over it with you. But this is just one crawl unit, basically. Cubic right angle weave unit. So from here, we have unit number 1. Oh, and of course my marker's dying. Let's see if I can get another one here. So there's our 4 beads on unit number 1. Unit number 2, we've added 3 beads, and that's number 2. Unit number 3, we've added 3 more beads, and that's unit number 3. Unit number 4, we are going to connect the right-hand side bead from the 3rd unit to the left-hand bead of unit number 1. To connect them, we're going to add a bead at the top and a bead at the bottom, and then we're going to sew those 2 together. So it's kind of hard when you're looking at it from a 2-dimensional and going from a 2-dimensional to a 3-dimensional, and I'll show you how to do that with the actual beads. So we've got to get 2 more of our 4s out here. We're going to be connecting bead number, the right angle weave number 3 to number 1 as we go in and add our unit and make it go together here. So our 4th unit is going to be created actually from combining unit number 1 and unit number 3. These 2 beads that I have here, I'm just sitting on the side so you can see where they're going to go. My thread is currently coming out the bottom of the right-hand bead of unit number 3. We're going to add our bead that's going to be the bottom of the 4th unit. Then the right-hand bead of this 4th unit is actually going to be the first bead that we put on, bead number 1, which is the left-hand side of unit number 1. So we put on a bottom bead. We're going to come back and connect by going from the bottom towards the top, because we're at the bottom, of bead number 1 in our design. From here then, I'm not going to pull tight, so that way you can still see it kind of hanging out. I'm going to add another bead. That's going to be our top bead of this unit. That top bead then is going to sit at the top of the right angle unit. We have our bead that our thread was currently coming out of. We put a bead on that's going to sit lateral or horizontal rather. And then we went through bead number 1, added our third or fourth bead, and coming back down unit number 1. So it looks like you have this huge looping effect going on. And I'll show you what that is. So I'm going to pull, but not pull super tight. So I have a bead at the top, I have a bead at the bottom, and I've connected the last bead in the design to the first bead in the design. See how that's happening there? And I know this gets a little bit kind of tricky to look at and to follow as soon as I round it out. So I'm going to keep this open, and now we're going to round it out. So this is the way, yep, we're doing a cube first. So for right angle weave, you can build up right away from the bottom, or you can build your first cube and then keep going on to there. It's either way works for it because you're just doing a series of right angle weave. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to round this out by pulling that thread tight. When I pull the thread tight, this is going to go into a square unit where you have 4 right angle units. Think about them as building blocks or bricks. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going to have 4 sides. Imagine my hands were 4 sides here. One side, this right-hand side is the one that we're creating right now. Unit number 1, unit number 2, unit number 3. And we're creating unit number 4 by connecting unit number 1 and unit number 3 together. So ready? We're going to pull this tight. And that's going to tighten up that thread. And look, we've got a little cube. You can turn this every way you want to. And you have 4 beads that sit to the top, the bottom, or the side. We've created a cube. When you're looking at that, then, and we have our little cube created, we have side number 1, that was right angle weave unit number 1, right angle weave unit number 2, right angle weave unit number 3, and then unit number 4, we connected 1 and 3 together. The cool thing with right angle weave is, as you're doing this, there's a bead that sits at the top of 1. There's a bead that sits at the top of 4, bead that sits at the top of 3, and a bead that sits at the top of 2. Just like the top, there's another one that sits at the bottom. Once you do this physically, so if you're watching and you don't have the materials on hand and you haven't done this yet, once you do this, you get it. You'll look at it and you'll be like, oh yes, I understand now how I'm getting that cube effect from the cubic right angle. From here then, you can pick anywhere that you want to, and you can build more right angle units off of this. What we're going to do is keep it really, really simple for our earrings, and we're going to fill in basically our holes with some smaller beads. So right now we have what would be the start of crawl stitch or cubic right angle weave. Anywhere we turn, we have 4 beads that are sitting in that right angle weave style. So we have 4 here on the side, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. Any way you turn and you look at it, you can get 4 beads sitting right next to one another. What I'm going to do now is reinforce a little bit by going through the top as well. So I'm going to go through the beads that aren't connected here that's sitting at the top. You can tell because they don't have thread connecting from one to the other. I'm going to bring my thread and needle up toward the top. I'm just going to make it a little bit more stable by sewing through the 4 top beads and the 4 bottom beads. So I'm just sewing through, I'm not adding any beads, I'm just sewing through the 4 at the top, and then I'm going to sew through the 4 at the bottom. Once you're through the 4 at the top here, you can see those sit a little bit closer and a little bit nicer. From here, I'm going to go to the opposite side. Okay. From here, going to the opposite bottom section. So the bottom is going to be an area too where, you know, those are kind of unconnected and when you're not seeing them connect. There's not threads that are connecting one to the other. I'm going to sew along the side here and we're going to get to the bottom because we just did the top. You need to do this. This is one of those things that you need to do in order to understand. I'm a firm believer in that. So I'm sewing through all 4 beads that would have been along the bottom. We're going to do the same thing one more time. I'm going to put this down before we go in and add our smaller beads on the side to decorate. So I now have this little cube. Every way I turn, 4 beads are connected. So see, you turn it this way, 4 beads. Turn it this way, 4 beads. Turn it this way, 4 beads. You're going to end up with 6 sides. 4 on the side. So here's a side here. Here's a side here. Here's a side here. And here's a side here. That's easy to talk about. Then you have those 4 sides. The top bead on each of those sides goes to the top. The bottom beads on each side go to the bottom and create basically 6 sides. I'm going to put this to the side and we're going to do the same thing one more time to reinforce the concept of how to get this cube. So once again, I'm going to take my thread and needle. I'm going to burn it off. Go ahead and flatten out your thread edge. And thread that needle. Now I know and I appreciate the fact that cubic beading or right angle weave or prismatic beading is not for everyone, but I think you have to try it and attempt it in front of you before you go in and say, oh, I can't really get it. Grab things, go through it slowly, and it'll start to make sense. So we're going to go in here and we are going to do some more. So once again, I'm going to do a stop bead. And this bead's going to come down here. And this one, I'm going to change up the colors a little bit. So that way it's a little bit easier to follow when I'm talking about the top and the bottom. So we're going to do gold and our gunmetal. So I'm going to do a series of 4 beads, gold, gunmetal, and gold. And we have the opposite. We're going to let that drop down to the bottom of our stop bead and sew back through to start our right angle weave. Go back through the first 3 beads and let your thread exit. From here, you're going to notice the gold beads are at the top and the gunmetal beads are the right and left. I'm going to add my next right angle unit, which I need a bottom bead. It's going to be my gold bead. I need a right hand bead, which is going to be my gunmetal, and I need a top bead, which is going to be my next gold one. From here, you're going to bring your thread and needle down through the bead that your thread is currently coming out of, and that's going to create your second unit. From here, sew through the bottom because your thread's going out towards the bottom. And then once again, you always want to come out through the right-hand side of it, and you have it in. Again here, we're going to do our next right angle unit, and we're going to do 4 turtle right angle units. This one's going to be the top. Here I am to the right, and also the bottom. I'm going to sew back up through the bead that my thread is currently coming out of to complete my right angle unit. From here, once again, I need to get over to the right-hand side of this right angle. And these mirrored round beads look so cool, even just as is, if you just want to do a plain right angle bead. Once you're coming down from here, go through the bottom, or go through, the right-hand side of the bead, and you'll see that you finished your 3rd unit. So our units of right angle weave, our gold beads are to the top and the bottom. Our gunmetal beads are going to be the sides of your boxing unit. When we connect it, I want to go in and I'm going to go top and bottom I need to make because I already have my right-hand side of the box and my left-hand side of the box. I just need a top and bottom to be able to make it into the cube. Here's going to be the bottom. I'm going to sew up through the opposite bead, opposite end. That's going to be this side. And I need another bead that's going to be at the top and then coming down through the right-hand side, the bead that my thread was currently coming out of. When I pull tight then, the thread's going to happen that it's going to pull it into one unit. And what that's going to do is bring it so that it has 4 sides. So there's my 4 gold beads to the top, 4 gold beads to the bottom, and my gunmetal beads are to my right and left. Hopefully that gets you the idea that this is created by 4 units. Here's my gold 4 top beads, 4 units. There's my bottom gold beads, and the 4 units that you can see, the 4 metal beads that go on the side. From here then, we are going to tighten up our right angle weave by sewing through the next bead that's on the bottom, going up through the bead that's on the side, and now I'm coming out the bead that's on the top. Once you're coming out through the bead that's on the top, here is where you're going to go in then with that top bead, and you can do actually your cubic right angle weave if you want to make it more than 1 bead. I'm going to sit this one down, and I'm going to grab my other one, my gunmetal, and I'm going to show you how to complete these earrings with our smaller beads that are catching on to the corners. From here, we'll pick back up this one, and I'll show you how to do a whole nother row of right angle weave above to get that cubic right angle weave. So if you want to stay here and just finish off the earrings, what you're going to do, you're done with your 4s, and you're going to get your 2mm or your 3mm beads out. Your 3mm beads, we're going to end up putting in all of the corners when you have it. Yeah, Jonah is right that people teach rawl in all different ways. So when it comes to crawl, which is cubic right angle weave, I start out with 1 cube first, and then I build up from that cube. Some people will come out and they'll start with just 4 beads and then build on top of that. I prefer to have my cube built first and then build my cube on top of cube on top of cube on top of cube. So it is, if you think, oh, I'm not getting it or this is a struggle, don't worry. People learn in different ways, and you can see all the different ways to do it. This is just right now decorating my single cube, which can be a starting point for cubic right angle weave. You can also start with just 4 beads and kind of build up from that first right angle weave section. The reason I'm starting with the cube way is because these earrings start with the cube. So from here, I'm going to put a 3mm bead into all the corners of my right angle weave, not into the middle, just into the corners. So I have one of my beads on. I'm going to sew through the next top bead. And that puts that in the corner. Turning it then, I add 1 more, sew through that next top bead, and that puts the 3mm in the corner. Sewing through here, adding a bead, puts the next one in the corner. Adding a bead, next one in the corner, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring my thread and needle out. This puts those extra little beads in the corner of all of that right angle weave. For me, I'm going to then go to the top of the design, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to sew up through the wall, which is the bead right there. And then I'm going to sew through the top bead. Now I'm at the top of all the right angle weaves. So remember when we were on the gold one and the gold and the gunmetal? We're only going through and adding between each one of those gold beads. So right here, I'm adding a bead, sewing through my next one along the top, that unit, adding a bead, sewing through the next one along the top, My thread is twisted here. Just going to go back and take that. There you go. Add a bead. Sew through the next one in line. Make sure you're not sewing through that little stop bead. And if you ever do any beaded beads or anything like that, it's the same concept, really. A lot of people don't know that they're doing the start of that cube or that right angle weave when they do beaded beads. On goes the last one and then through the bead. Now I have each of those little corners decorated with one of the smaller beads. See how fun that is? Just gives it that extra little pizzazz. These look like I should be wearing them with a fun and funky shirt. Okay. From here now, we're just going to go in and we're going to create X's. So I'm going to go in here, add some of my silver beads, and then the next one we'll go back to, we will make the gold and the gunmetal. We'll go in and I'll build a second row on top of the right angle weave. So from here, we have our cube. See how we have the cube, and every angle that you turn, you have those little beads to the side. From here, we're going to do some X's to decorate the middle of all those right angle weave units. Go ahead and do 1, 2, 3 15s. I'm sewing out the top right side of that top unit of bead. I'm going to sew into the bottom left unit. And as I sew to the bottom left unit, I am then going to go back and add one bead, and then I'm going to crisscross through that center bead there. From here then, we're adding one more bead, and we're sewing through that top bead. Then. And there we go. So this is going to be, you want to push this down towards the center of that design in the middle. And you have that X there right in the middle. And then you're going to flip to the next section. So see how that X just really kind of hides the middle of that right angle weave. And you have that right angle weave here. Same deal with Cheryl. She did it with gold beads in between the silver. So see all of that. Oh, thanks, guys. Yeah, it's fun. Sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't when it comes to the right angle weave. I totally understand the struggles. It took me a while to get it and redoing it. And then when it came to crawl, same thing. Once you get it, and you never lose it, honestly. 3 more beads go on. I'm coming out the bottom now of this bead. I'm going to go into the top of the next one. And we're just rolling basically through the center here, laying those 3 beads on top. I'm going to add one more bead, share that center bead, creating the X. Give a nice tight pull to get rid of that thread. Add one more 15, and I'm sewing back into that bead that my thread was originally coming out of to do that nice little X formation. Pop those seed beads like Cheryl did right to the top. So again, that next unit has that little X fashion in it. See it? There you go. So we have 2 X's now. We need to keep going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here, sew through the next bead, and sew through the next black bead. And now I'm going to do an X here. So you're creating X's on every single side. Where you go in and you do 1, 2, 3. Coming out the bottom of that bead, go in top of the opposite one. Wiggle your way through there. And if you don't like seeing thread at all, like I said with this one, you'll see just a little bit. Cheryl pulls really tight towards the center. You can add another 15 on the top and the bottom, and that's easy too. From here, you can see I rotated in my hands just to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to sew through that middle bead. As I sew through that middle bead, I'm going to add another bead and then come back through the bead that my thread was currently coming out of. That pushes that little X of beads towards the center. Give a nice tight pull, and there you go. So there's the X there. So I turn on my sides and I say, all right, the top has an X. The box number 1 has an X. Box number 2 has an X. Oh, box number 3 needs an X. So I'll come down through here, through this bead, and I'll do an X in the middle of this design. So I turn to the side just so that way it's easier to hold. I'm using 3 seed beads, 1, 2, and 3, coming out of the bottom of this box here, and I'm going into the top of the bead that sits opposite in this same right angle unit. From here then, I'm going to add another 15, share the 15 that sits in the middle right there. See how that's getting shared. Add 1 more 15, and then sew back through the bottom bead from the left toward the right. Once you sew back through with your fingers, with your needle, just kind of force all of those beads to sit up and in the middle. See how this one wants to kind of sit to the top? Nice tight pull, gets them all to sit right in the middle of that right angle weave design. From here, then I look for the next one. I'm like, oh, where's my next box that needs one? Oh, this box needs one. Perfect. I'm going to sew through the next bead on that right angle weave, making sure I'm not seeing any extra thread. And let's do the box right here as well. 3 beads go on, 1, 2, 3, coming out the bottom left, going into the top right of this right angle unit. Pull those 3 beads down towards the center. Coming out the top left now, add a 15. Share the middle bead that's already there of the 15s. Add another 15, and then sew from the right back to the left to your starting spot of the bead that sits at the bottom. There you go. Get that X right in the middle and pull. So now you can see, all right, I have X's in all of my little boxes, the top unit, the bottom unit, up 1 more to go. So I'm going to sew through a bead to get onto that unit there, coming out of the bottom of this right angle unit. I'm going to sew through the right. And now I'm going to go through and create the X in the middle of this one. Move that stop bead out of the way. We'll tie off to that. And I've got my last X to create. 1, 2, and 3 beads go on. I'm coming out of the bottom right of this one. So I'm going to go into the top left of the one that sits next to it. And there you go. Those 3 beads sit to the side. From here, add 1 more bead. And then you're going to sew from that 15 from the right towards the left. Give a nice tight pull. And then 1 more bead going back through into the bottom bead that your thread was originally coming out of. Make sure to force those 5 beads to the middle. Sew up the side of your right angle weave. So I'm currently coming out of the bottom bead of that right angle unit. I'm going to go to the right bead of that right angle unit and out. So now you have these really cute cubes here. So this is cute. Really, or cute. This is a cube. It is a cute cube, but it's a cube. So it's really easy that you have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. And your 4 sides get built basically like a building. That you have your 4 beads. We'll flip over to this side with our stop bead. Those 4 beads are the bottom building blocks of our right angle weave. When we put those facing down, we also have the top beads that sit at the top of the right angle unit. And then you have the sides that build the walls to our building. From here, you can decide, all right, I have a single story building right now. Do I want to go a double story? Do I want to get 4 floors or 5 floors? That's when you're going to start adding on to that cubic right angle weave and making it more stories. This is the start of that cubic right angle weave because it's your cube. We're going to go back to this version here where we have our gold beads that are the base and the top and our gunmetal that are the sides, and we're going to build onto that. Prior to doing that, to finish off this earring, in case you want to, you are just going to need a wire guard or a wire protector. The wire guard or wire protector, I'm going to put right over one of my little 3mm beads here. So I'm going to sew through that corner 3mm. You can see my thread end is right there as well too, so it's kind of perfect. I'm going to grab my wire guard or my wire protector, and I have that in a rose gold color to match. come down through the wire guard or wire protector on the other side. Move that stop bead just out of the way a little bit. So back through that same mirrored round bead that your thread is coming out of, making sure your thread stays in your wire guard and your wire protector. Go through that wire guard one more time. Anytime I use a wire guard or a wire protector, I like to go through and do my thread through twice. I like to have 2 pieces of thread wear right there. Come back down the other side. And then when I get back down the other side, guess what? My stop bead is there. So my stop bead is there. As I get down to this other side, I'm just going to take off the stop bead and tie the 2 thread ends together. Take off the starter bead, stop bead, starter bead, slide it off, grab my thread ends, tie right over left and left over right. And that finishes up this simple little cube. The wire guard's right there at the top, so that way it sits on the cube rather than sitting kind of on the diagonal. So cute. Yes, this is where you would use the endless ring. So if you wanted to use a ring on here, what you would do is slide it right onto the wire guard prior to sewing through the bead next. You'd slide it right into here. So same thing with the silver one. Come add the wire guard, go through the first hole of the wire guard, second hole of the wire guard, add the ring, and then go through your bead. So you're adding the loop just like you would the wire guard. So say I have another wire guard to put on here. I would take my wire guard, go up one side, come down the other side, and then prior to sewing into the bead, you're going to take your loop and sew through your loop. That loop then, this one already has an earring on it, but this loop, maybe, nope, wrong thread. This loop here, let's see if I have another loop. Here's a twisted jump ring, we'll use this. Twisted jump ring then, loop, endless ring, doesn't matter what it is. You put it on, it drops in there, and then you sew through the next bead. So it hangs out just like a clasp or a closure that you're going to attach to that wire guard. Yes, these beads are so sparkly and so bright that they really create a gorgeous design. Like I said, I've been wearing a bracelet for a while with the mirrored rounds on. They've held up really, really well. Like I never take this off, shower with it and everything. These are the rose gold ones. They've darkened a little bit, but I've worn this nonstop for about 2 months now, I think, in the shower and everything wearing on it. So they've been great. And you're just going to add whatever ring you want to that wire guard and then sew back into that bead. Once you have that completed then, you're just going to go in after tying the knot here, burn off your thread edges down, and then burn them flat towards the project. And that creates that little mirrored cube bead. This looks really cute, honestly, as a little necklace too. So easy when you're working on it. Now, what happens if you want to make it bigger? So if you want to make this a little bit longer, that is true crawl. So we've done our first crawl unit or our cubic right angle unit. And we now have the top, which is all of our gold beads, the bottom, which is all of our gold beads, and the sides or the walls, which are our gunmetal. To build onto this cubic section, we need more walls and another ceiling. So how are we going to do that? Right here, we have our cube, our top of our right angle weave. Some people will do this, some people will not, but I'm going to go through and I'm going to reinforce the top of this cubic unit. So 4 right angle weave units that are sewn together to make a cube is 1 cubic unit. Does everybody get that? When I sew 4 right angle weave units together in a cube, This gives me 1 cubic unit. So this here is 1 cubic unit. And this is the top of the 1 cubic unit. We're going to build onto this a second story. So imagine this is our house, our gunmetal are our walls, our gold is our foundation, and our gold is our roof. We're going to scratch the roof and make that the floor of the next one. So here we're going to build another wall that's going to sit on the right-hand side. We're going to build another roof, and then we're going to build another wall. Mm-hmm. The next one that we're going to do then is going into that same bead that our thread is coming out of, and that creates our next right angle unit. So if you're familiar with right angle, you'll say, oh my goodness, this looks exactly like right angle weave. Yep, it looks like it's going right angle weave on the side here, but remember we're building onto the top of those 4 units on that cubic unit. From here, we're going to go up through the wall, just like we would if we were coming out that right-hand side. So see how we're right there? We have another unit. We're going to rotate in our hand to the right and spin, and we're going to do our next right angle unit. We need another top bead. We need another wall bead, and then we're going to share the bead that was the ceiling, which now becomes the floor of this next unit. That then you can see that right angle weave unit. And we're going to sew back up through the wall on the right here to complete it. And then just like we've been doing, we need to get over to the right-hand side to continue. Going through the top, coming out the right-hand side bead. Once again, spin it in your hands to complete that unit. Spinning in your hand then to complete the unit. And tightening this up. You're going to notice that you already have the bottom there. You already have the left side. I'm going to sew through the bottom. I need another wall and another ceiling bead. And then I'm going to sew down through the left-hand wall of the one I just created. If I look right now, and you can see it, it almost looks like 3 independent units, just like we did. So remember, here's unit number 1, unit number 2, unit number 3. It looks exactly like it did when we had the original first 4 units. We need our 4th unit to be built. And just like we did where we connected, we're going to do the same thing here. To build our 4th unit, I want to be coming out the right-hand side. I already have my floor. I already have the bead to the right side. I already have the bead to the left side. I just need one more bead, which is going to be my ceiling. So down through the bead on the left to complete that right angle unit. Go through the bottom. Go through the left. Give a nice tight pull and exit through the top. Now when you look, you have 2 cubic units right on top of one another. So there you have one right on top of the other. Again, we've got 4 beads to the top that are now the roof. And see how you have the vertical beads and the horizontal beads. The vertical beads are your walls. The horizontal beads are going to be your floor and ceiling, always. So here you are then going through and you're going to do another right angle weave step up. If you want to, you can lock it in by connecting and sewing through all of the top beads. So you can turn through all those golds. I'm going to do one more and then show you how to build. I'll show you just kind of how to complete it as an earring. So right here again, we have our 4 beads that were the top of those 4 right angle units. We're going to build a whole nother level onto this high rise. Floor number 1, floor number 2. We need the walls of floor number 3, which is going to be our gunmetal bead. We need a new ceiling bead, and we need another wall bead. I have those 3 beads on. I'm going to go back through the floor bead that my thread is currently coming out of. And then once again, I need to come out the right-hand side of my right angle weave unit. So there is the first raw unit out of 4 that are going to be used to make this third floor. From here, I'm going to spin. I need another ceiling, which is going to be my gold bead that sits on the top. I need another wall, which is going to be my bead on the side. And then I'm going to sew through what was the ceiling from row 2, or from level 2, is now going to be the floor of row number 3, just like a regular hood. I'm going to go through that bottom bead that's already there, the gold one from the row before, add a new wall, and add another ceiling bead. So down through the bead that my thread was currently coming out of. And then once again, I need to get out the right-hand side of this right angle unit, this group of 4 beads. I'm going to sew down through the bottom. Right angle weave is just a series of figure 8s. And then up through the right-hand side. I'm out the right-hand side. As I spin here and you get further and further in your crawl stitch, you can see more and more how easily it is to keep track of where your beads are and what color you need. After you get about 3 floors here, it becomes really repetitive and easy to keep track of. From here, I need another ceiling bead. I need another gold. And that's it. So I need my other gold bead because my ceiling is the only bead that I need left. Other than that, I already have my wall because I'm sharing. Go through the floor. Go through one my thread was originally coming out of, the left-hand side of that right angle unit. And then once again, I'll go through the top because I need to now get an add-on to the top. So see how that right angle weave is starting to happen when you look at it as, here's the first floor of our hotel. Here's the second floor of our hotel. Here's the third floor of our hotel. And if I build the 4th floor on the hotel, it's just going to sit right on top of the 3rd. So if I do it again, I'm going to do the exact same things going on and having the next one be. Yeah, and you can keep going and doing this crawl stitch. I mean, this is crazy blingy. It would look really cool hanging down. You could actually do it around a pair of earrings like that. I might have to do one like this where I have the earrings sit in the center and you bead around it. It's really, really easy to keep going and create crawl. And once you get, again, about 3 levels or 3 stories, you can really see how it starts to take place and how it starts to keep going. Some people will sew through all of these beads just to kind of keep it tight. Traditionally, you do not sew through the top beads because you're not actually connecting all of those beads in the right angle weave. Some people will, some people won't. There's no right, there's no wrong. But this right now is 1, 2, 3 crawl units high. So whether or not you just do one single crawl unit, which is helpful for people to realize that this is 1 cubic right angle weave unit, 1 cube. This is 3 units right on top of the other. So easy to do and to create once you get the hang of it and once you have it. So it would be gorgeous on a crawl necklace and pendant. Yep. How do you count the boxes? I would count the gold beads on the side, but now I think I should be counting the hematite ones. Yes. So when you count, you are going to want to count the walls. So you're going to want to count the beads on the right and the left sides to figure out how many units you have. You can also look with your needle and kind of draw out and say, here's 1 empty hole, here's 2 empty holes, here's 3 empty holes. I know that I've made 3 cubic right angle weave units. If you count the gold beads, it's going to look like you have 4, but you don't. You actually only have 3 units. So when you're going in, count those empty holes or count the beads along the sides. 1, 2, 3, I've got 3 units. If I add another silver, then I've got 4 units, and you keep going up from there. You can also, if you want to, decorate it a little bit. If I say, okay, now I'm done with this, let's take some of these 3mm ones, the little tiny guys, and go down the side here. I can add in the gold. It was a great question, India. Great, great question. A lot of people have trouble counting or realizing whether peyote or right angle weave, how many rows they've done. It's kind of one of those hard things. for people to think of. So here I have just going down the sides of my right angle weave, adding in my little 2mm beads, just like we did. But this time I'm doing it for 3 rows or 3 units of crawl rather than 1. So I'm adding my little 2s, just going up and down through the units and through the boxes. The mirrored rounds really do shine like no other. Oh, you can totally slide a thin chain in the middle for this. Absolutely. Here along the top then, I put 1 in, and I just sew through to the next bead and down. So this is basically embellishing cubic right angle weave, adding extra beads in, doing that X's. So when we did the original earring and we added the X's in, that is embellished cubic right angle weave. So this here, even though it's only 1 unit, it's embellished cubic right angle weave. We embellished, or we added the 3s, I'm sorry, as well as the 15 O's. As I go in here, I think I have 1 more row to do. You can see when you embellish it or add beads to it, you often stiffen it up because you're kind of filling in the holes. So see now here, it looks a little bit more like a cubic because you're filling in all those corners. So I still have 1 more to go, adding them between here. So cubic right angle weave can be really difficult and challenging when you haven't mastered the cube. Once you master the cube, it's easier to get the concept of building on more layers on top of the other one. That's all it is that you are building the layers on top of one. So if I have it just going 2-dimensional and showing, here's your first floor. There's first floor number 1, first floor number 2, or floor number 2. It shares the ceiling of floor 1 and the floor of floor 2 are the same bead. When you do the third one, the floor of 3 is the same as the ceiling of 2. The only thing for cubic is that this also goes 3-dimensional, and you have it on all sides as well. 1, 2, 3, and then this would be the top as well. Same thing, 3 on this side that you can't see, 2 on this side, 1 on that side. Hopefully, this helps with knowing that this first cube, this 1 cube that you do, is the start of that cubic right angle weave. You can put them on ear wires then and make them into really pretty little cube earrings. You can keep going with the cubes and expand them even more and make them into a slide to go on a necklace, a full necklace if you want to, and you can really change it up. So hopefully the goal is that not only do you make this really cool set of earrings from this video that Cheryl designed, but you also have a concept now about cubic right angle weave, that when you're doing those 4 units of right angle weave, unit number 1, 2, 3, and then fold it back and connect 1 and 3 to create unit 4, that is 1 cubic unit that you've created. I know it can be really confusing, cubic right angle weave, but once you realize that it's just 1 box, and then you build a second box on top of that box, and a third box on top of that, it becomes really easy to conceptualize and to get the concept of building a box and then going up and building another level, and so on. So if you are still having trouble with this, don't worry, you are in good company. I'm helpful and hopeful that through more explanations, sometimes you're not in the right mood, or I'm not even speaking well enough, that it just clicks sometimes. So don't be sad if you don't get it right away. Try it again. Start with a simple cube and go into that concept. Then go from the simple cube, do another simple cube. Perfect the cube before you go on and create extra levels, making more of that cubic right angle weave. As always, everybody, thank you so much for joining in. I hope this was really, really informational, not only just to make our little cube, but also to learn that crawl stitch or that cubic right angle weave. That's what it's standing for. And yeah, love that aha moment when you have it and you say, I got it, I understand it, it all came together. Hopefully you have that and watch as well too. If anybody's struggling with cubic right angle weave as well, make sure to give them this link, or there's other videos too to have onto it. So thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget, that tomorrow at 1 o'clock I'll be on Facebook and Twitch, but then also we have a live sale tomorrow from 7 to 9 with Anna and I. So thanks everybody for joining in, and see you tomorrow.